Hey, welcome to the latest episode of the Wellbeing Show. I've been away for a couple of weeks, so sorry you've been seeing all the repeats rather. But I've got a brand new guest this morning, Trevor, who's joined us, and we'll be chatting to him about himself growing up, and we'll get the lowdown on the royal family in a minute. But as usual, please be aware this is pre-recorded, although it looks live. And so don't call me during the show, but do send me a message 07 506 319 745. If you've got any comments, just add them in. That'd be great to hear from you. Subscribe to the channel. And then just let me know what you like or don't like, what you'd like to know more about. And it'd be great to hear from you. It really helps us if you subscribe as well. So that's the sales pitch done. I'll
All right.
stop there. Welcome, Trevor. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. I'm just glad it's not raining today.
I know, I
You know
know.
what I mean? I'm like, it's a
Yeah.
result.
You know what? I'm actually finding my mood now that it's getting sort of lighter, uh, quicker, earlier. I
Right.
actually find my mood is
Yeah.
is changing, and I do feel like there is a direct correlation between your mood and the sunlight.
There is for me, definitely. Definitely. I'm one of those sad people, during the winter, I'm like, I mean, I
Mm.
sort of don't mind it in the sense of if I could just stay in bed a lot longer, but I still have to work, which is
The
really
thing is, I
frustrating.
always say this: we're probably one of only species that don't hibernate during the winter. You
Yeah.
know, and is that what we're meant to be doing?
Not
Unfortunately, right?
me, not according to my body, I'm telling
Yeah,
you.
I know. No.
I should be definitely
I would
hibernating.
love to hibernate.
Where are you based, mate?
I live in London, so I live in
Great.
West London. Yeah.
Cool. I'm over in the east, so
Okay.
over in
Yeah.
Hackney at the moment.
Cool.
Whereabouts in West London are you?
Like Chiswick.
I know Chiswick. Yeah.
Yeah, Chiswick. Yeah,
Right.
I've moved here last year. I've actually lived all around. I've lived all around London. So
Have you?
yeah,
You know it really well. So
yeah.
you're an MBE. Tell me about that. Member of the British Empire, is that right?
Yeah, apparently so. So interesting story.
Go on.
I got the letter through the post. Do you know, funny enough, it was a strange one. I got a letter through the post,
Right.
and I grew up on a council estate, and that letter came through. I thought, oh God, what is this? I'm in trouble because it was like from the Secretary of the State. It was from like Her Majesty. It was really like an intense letter, and I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I had like palpitations. I was like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
right.
read it, and it said like, we'd like to formally offer you, for all your services to vulnerable children,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, to become a member of the British Empire, which is a huge moment actually. And for me, it didn't come as a surprise, um, because I do believe good people should be rewarded in
Yeah.
life, but also for me, it was more of the reward to give to people in our sector, so people that are giving back. It shows that it is a special thing we're doing. Whether you're a cleaner, whether you're a support worker, whether you're a manager, whether
Yeah.
you're a
Yeah. Yeah.
therapist, we are saving lives, and I think it just gives recognition to all. And the most special thing about it really was my mum being able to go to St James's Palace.
Serious. I bet
Yeah,
that was
it was
wild, man. That would have
unbelievable.
been, yeah, she'd have been
Yeah,
blown away, right?
very, very proud, very proud.
Wow. I could just imagine her in her
Yeah,
best clothes, just the
yeah,
biggest smile in the world,
yeah.
unable to drop it. Do you know what I mean?
Brilliant. It was
Wow.
probably the best experience of my life so far, for sure. In terms of like
Cool.
that moment with my mum, it was quite special.
Oh, I can imagine. And you grew up in an estate in London. Which one? Where was it?
So I grew up in Streatham, South London,
Okay.
and to be honest with you, I actually don't see my growing up on an estate as a bad thing, actually, especially in
Okay.
today's day and
Yeah.
age, because when you live on an estate, everyone knows each other. You hear the bounce of a football or basketball when people are going past your house. You know it's time to play out. It was a real community, albeit we had postcode rivalries, in terms of estate to estate. So it was quite
Right.
challenging, but it's kind of what led me to want to work with young people, actually, because I was between the two of trying to become a professional footballer,
Was it?
but it was a huge risk. My mum being a sort of single mum on benefits, and it was like, can I afford to take this risk?
Right.
And at that time, you're talking, God, 20 years ago. It's like there wasn't any. It's not like now you got social media. You can see the pathway. You can see, okay, this person's gone from, we only had what Ian Wright maybe as the kind of model of how to become a footballer from low levels upwards. So it was too risky. So I just got a part-time job as a youth worker, as just to try and balance out working and playing football, and that was really the insight into children and young people. So I
Uh-huh.
started work at like 18, 19, and it was the greatest thing ever, because if you've ever been a youth worker or you've ever heard of it, you go into a building that has tennis, pool tables, music studio, football, and it was just you're getting paid to play. It's a brilliant. And I was thinking, wow, I get paid to play table tennis. Lo and behold, at that age, I wasn't thinking I'm making a difference. I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking I'm really helping these young. But I was making a difference just with my presence and just with my energy and my consistency.
Do you mind if we go back a little bit? Because
Yeah,
I think, I sort of what I hear from you so far is that you're clear that you're not going to let circumstances hold you back. That's part of who you are as a person, right? You're going to deal with reality. But I think people should understand, because I've worked down in Streatham. I used to work for Kids Company, who I'm sure you've heard of, like in the past, sort of thing. And so I've worked a lot in South London with kids from those estates, and they are quite tough. I mean, they're quite tough environments, and to have an attitude of I'm not going to let that drag me down. I'm not going to get involved in the gangs. I'm not going to be part of that labeling process and the structural inequalities that do exist, and so on. That's quite that in itself, that ability to think in that way is quite revolutionary and radical, given those.
yeah. No,
Do you
do
know
you know
what
what
I mean?
people?
It's like it
Yeah,
is.
no. People always say I'm quite, quite humble. And do you know, I come from a place of gratitude. Like,
Do you?
yes, I,
Right.
I didn't become a professional footballer, but football saved my life in many ways, because it showed me, different parts of London. I was able to meet new people. I was able to make new friends with people from all walks of life. But I think, yeah, Streatham wasn't. I tell you what was hard about Streatham. If anyone's ever been to Streatham, it's the longest high street in Europe, from what I know today. And that high
Yeah, it's
street
pretty long.
takes you from, you can get a bus from Croydon right across into the other side of London. So if you're a young person, as I was, you wouldn't go on the bus, because you don't know who's getting on that bus and where they're traveling from. So we laugh about it now, but if you sat at the top of the bus, you were asking for trouble. So we'd always sit downstairs. But
Yeah.
as a teenager, you were considered like, not cool if you're sitting downstairs as well
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
bus.
Yeah.
So it was hard. There's loads of estates in Streatham. But I don't know. I don't know what I think, because I instantly was working with young people. It kind of it shaped my
Really. Yeah.
my pathway, because it wasn't about me; it was about them.
Okay.
So that really helped.
I mean, I think that's interesting, like developing a service attitude. I'm here for other people and their needs.
Yeah,
Often can be transformative, I think, can't it? Giving people, and we talk about volunteerism as being a very important part of life, and maybe that's been lost a bit. So you got that sense. I used to be a youth worker as well, so you don't need to convince me of how
yeah,
important youth work is or play work. And I find it a bit sad that a lot of those services seem to have disappeared. I mean, I think that's crucial often. Um,
yeah. I mean, we it's the early intervention, isn't it? It's
yeah,
it's it's. I always see it as it's home away from home. It's a school away from school. It's keeps them safe. It keeps them warm. And youth workers are a special people. They all often come from their own traumas, their own difficulties,
that's
or they've got their own experiences that they can
sure.
uplift. So I think youth workers are special people. And I think,
And I think that is crucial. There's this thing, isn't there, about I think the young people can, in the youth worker, not so much somebody like me now, because I'm a bit old and past it, but when I was doing it, close enough in age and if you, like you say, from similar type of experience, but yet being paid to do a job and help
yeah.
other people was an important role modeling for young people, and I would say young men as well, in particular, maybe
Yeah. Do you know, and
having male role models.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the care space, which I've made a career out of,
Yeah,
is not seemed as cool, especially being a male. And so youth work seems to be the only pocket, or unless you're like a
I think
PE
you're
team
right. You're
or for
right.
you know,
Yeah,
the only pocket where boys and men can go and work in and
I think, yeah.
yeah. Do you know what I mean?
That's definitely my experience. I mean, that's really interesting. I've really thought about it that way, but that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
That there was always in that space, like a lot of guys working in it and seemed okay with that. I don't know if that's because there was a lot of sports involved and all that sort of stuff, but
But yeah,
definitely,
probably. But I also think the world's changing without us always knowing. And I think, males are becoming, in touch with their caring side a lot
yeah,
more. And the youth work's the only space that, males feel confident being in. It's very
yeah,
difficult to be a male worker going to work in a nursery because of the stigma around, working with babies and children. And whereas actually, it's caring, isn't it? And I think we've all got it in us.
yeah,
So society needs to normalize, still have the legislation and the protections, but they need to normalize carers being male, female,
yeah.
whatever,
I mean,
gender. And
it's interesting because before the show we were talking about training as like therapists and saying you thought about doing it, but it's a big commitment, all that sort of stuff. I mean, I trained as one a long time ago, but actually, when I trained, I was the only man on the course,
yeah,
literally the only bloke on a
yeah,
course of 30 people.
yeah,
And so, and I don't know what the gender balance is like these days. And I don't know if it's changed all that much. Um, but certainly, there was only one person of color on that course as well.
yeah, yeah. So that
You know
that
what I
that
mean?
was
So it's like
yeah.
serious issue going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I remember when because I've becoming a therapist, I've done like a counseling diploma, and I've done like therapeutic qualifications and stuff.
Yeah.
But becoming a psychotherapist, a psychotherapist, etc. Like I feel like it is hard, but it is. I don't know. Maybe it's not really seen as a pathway for, especially people that look like me. When I
Yeah.
was growing up, it's like
Absolutely.
you think of
Absolutely.
a therapist,
Yeah.
and that word therapy, that word therapist was a luxury word 20 years ago. Only
Yeah.
people that could afford a therapist would have a therapist. Whereas now it's quite an okay, people can
I
access
think
it.
it has. Yeah. I think it has changed.
Yeah.
Coming
So
back to your experiences as a youth worker, what was it about the youth work that you remember and that you value?
well, there's two things.
Yeah.
The reason why I went into fostering, but firstly, what I remember was the smiles, the happy faces,
Yeah.
the
It's,
um the
that's
the,
nice.
the attitude,
Yeah.
the just the community feel. We had just, do you know what it was? I remember children being children. That's
Yeah.
what I remember about youth work, and I think society's lost that. All we see in the news is wars, politics. Children don't need to see that. Our job as adults is to protect them from danger and protect them from bad news. And I think with a youth club, it's just children being children, children
Yeah.
having fun, arts and crafts. We had dance class. We had, the mirrors where the young girls would dance and the boys would get involved and but be a bit shy or too cool to go in there. And then the boys would play pool. They're loud. You got the music player, and it was just children being children. And that's what I remember about
Cool.
youth work.
Cool.
And
Nice.
then secondly, which was what made me get into fostering, was the frustration of they would come in on Tuesday, sometimes 3 till 6 or 6 to 9. You'd give them what you think is the greatest advice ever, and then by Thursday, it's almost like it's forgotten. And I could never wrap my head around where that information went. And I would say, look, put down the knives, or you don't need
Yeah.
to be in a gang. You think I'm giving great advice, but then forgetting that, you know, what I realize now is you're a product of your environment. And so
Yeah.
therefore, when
Yeah.
you're going back home, I'm telling them put down your knife. They can in a youth club, they're safe, but they're going back to their unsafe environments.
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly. Yeah.
it's survival, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Right.
then it's almost resets. And that's what made me realize very young and very quickly that your environment plays a huge
Yeah.
part on your decisions. And I think that's why I went into the residential and the fostering, is because it's like, well, actually, if they were in my environment, could I really make a difference? And it was kind of like a
Cool.
challenge.
Do you remember school and what it was like for you? And have you any thoughts about school these days?
School was horrific.
Was it?
Um, Yeah, I mean, primary school was fun. I missed probably a good 2 years of primary school, and I missed 2 years of secondary school actually. So I did miss a huge chunk. Primary school was, I just remember playing. It was fun. It was like just all I did was play football, and I was just known to play football. So primary school was great. I wasn't academically
Okay.
smart. And secondary school, because I missed year 7, year 8, I went to like a Peru without realizing I went to a Peru because I didn't get into it.
For people who don't know, no, pupil referral unit.
Yeah,
It's sort of halfway between a school and a prison.
yeah, exactly.
Do
And
you know
and
what I mean? It's
but
like
I
quite
didn't get
hardcore.
into school because of my grades, because I never took school serious, and that's ultimately part of the reason why I didn't get great grades. Not that I was really naughty, it's just I didn't understand what was being thrown at me. I had epilepsy growing up, and it did impact my brain a lot. So I
Yeah.
feel like I couldn't understand what I was being taught, and I couldn't retain the information. And in secondary school, I went to the Peru, and it was like it was a huge shock to the system. Now, I grew up on a council estate, and I thought that was tough. But going to a Peru where it's like children from all parts of South London who usually improves because of behavior or
Yeah, that would
experience.
have been quite dangerous and
Yeah,
disturbing. I mean,
and it was
literally, that's what a Prue is.
yeah, and it was
It's not
year
fun.
7 and 8 was it survive. It was survival of the fittest. It was bullying. I never thought I could be bullied by a female. I was.
Yeah,
It was horrific. I actually remember leaving my council estate, getting to the end of it, and just having this panic attack and anxiety of leaving and not wanting to go into school because it was so bad. And my mum, she's amazing. She fought for me to get into the local secondary school in Streatham. And to be fair, it was my local school was only 10-minute walk, but I didn't get in based on results. And so she fought, went to the newspaper, she fought everything to get me into this secondary school. And I loved my secondary school, but I felt like by then it was too late, because I think year 7, year 8, the basics you learn, basic division and algebra, whatever it may be, I missed all of that. So I went end of year 8, which is pretty much year 9. And then it was just like nothing made sense.
yeah,
My whole school journey, the curriculum, sports, no problem. Resistance materials where you're using arts and crafts, no problems. Geography, okay. English, okay, because I feel like English language, you can kind of, you know, write whatever you want and it
okay,
sounds good.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But math, science, all of that stuff it wasn't a great experience, if I'm honest.
okay, okay. And also, I guess you would have been quite traumatized by that Prue experience. It
Yeah,
seems
but
very odd they sent you there. I mean, I don't understand that, to be honest.
yeah, but it's because I guess my mum thought this was the school, because if you look at the catchment, we were in the catchment. So we should have got into school. So I think, and she didn't want me to go to any other school
Right.
because again, the options of schools, they weren't great in South London. There wasn't a great option. So it was like, this one is the best of the bunch. So she
Yeah.
really wanted me to go there. And yeah, I remember actually school was hard. I was trying to find myself. You join a school late. You haven't got a peer. You got to make friends.
Yeah.
So it was tough. And I think that's probably what's given me the resilience. And I also can relate to the children when they're struggling and the teachers are struggling. It's kind of understanding that actually they might not see the curriculum the way they're expected to see the curriculum. So yeah.
It's interesting as well because I mean I'm sort of guessing. I mean I guess it quite early on in the conversation. You're going to be one of those people that you don't focus on the difficulties and challenges you've had. You focus on your successes and you focus on what makes you able to achieve. And I was sort of figuring from the beginning of the conversation, I think it's true, that because of that, you don't often explain to people fully the hardships you've experienced. And
I've
I
actually never
understand why you
shared.
don't, because
Yeah,
it's
I've
you
never
don't want it
shared.
to be part of your story necessarily, and I
Exactly.
get it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've never shared that part of my
Yeah.
education. Maybe because it's where I'm being asked or how I'm being asked in terms of,
It's
or
also, I guess, you just don't want it to define you, and I get it.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
get it.
no, but I think it's a huge part of who I am. And it's also a huge part of what I want people to become, which is vulnerable, being okay with the truth
Yeah,
and being okay to say, this is my story.
yeah,
I didn't, like, albeit it was challenging, I still really loved my childhood. I really would go
Yeah,
back if
same here. I mean, I grew up, my folks are Irish, so during the Troubles. And so I grew up with a lot of racism, violence, alcoholism, and all that sort of stuff. So,
yeah,
I had a very frightening father
yeah,
who's now dead, but he scared the pants off me with his
yeah,
violence and stuff. So,
yeah.
so I sort of figured I knew something about your story. But I think it's similar to you, that doesn't define me.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
What
And I think,
defines me are the choices I'm making today, to be honest. That's more about what defines me. And it seems to me you have that sort of attitude. And I'm interested to know where that comes from. I'm guessing from your mum. I mean, my mum was very much, she wanted us to be successful. She was an immigrant Irish woman herself, but she was one of those immigrants that was very hardworking, non-stop. You never signed on. It's like non-stop work from this woman. She sort of instilled us with this work ethic and instilled us with a very positive attitude towards life. Where did you get that from, do you think?
it's a great question. I think I'm still trying to figure out. But I think my
Okay.
mum, the caring element, I certainly got from my mum. Like my mum was, even though we lived on a council estate, she would fight for every resident to make sure they had, double glazed windows.
That's
Make sure
awesome.
my mum was like,
Wow.
chair of the estate, so she would go around
Right. Yeah.
helping people, and she had that desire fighting, but the most important thing, the care.
Yeah.
So I certainly think I get it from her, but I think for me it was when you look at a council state environment, you could see the outcomes. It's very clear. You can see, okay, this person has made it out through going to university. This person, was selling drugs. This person was in a gang. It was very
Yeah.
clear. You could see everyone's success and everyone's pathway. And I think for me, it was never cool to sell drugs. It was never cool to carry a knife. It was always cool to play football on a different estate, or to
Yeah.
just be out having fun. For me, that was what was cool. So I was lucky enough to be aware, and also my mum. I didn't really have a father figure. My father is in my life, but he wasn't present from a
Yeah.
young age. So I think I have what, 6 sisters, so there was quite a lot of females. So I
Okay.
think growing up, I had to become a sort of a strong male influence and kind of balance it out for my sisters and my siblings. And so I think
I mean, it's still interesting. I mean, I carried a knife when I was younger, and then I tried to imagine using it, and it terrified me, so I got rid of it.
yeah, I
Like,
never. Do you know what?
you know
Weirdly,
what I mean? I was like trying to imagine pushing it into somebody, and I went, I don't like that thought. Uh,
I was actually scared of the law. Like
right.
friends of mine would carry knives, and I would always think, what if you get caught?
Yeah.
That would always be my thought process.
Okay.
And they'd be thinking, well, if I get caught from a gang without it, then it's worse than I would never think, because I would always think I could run. I could always get away. I always just worm my way out of situations. But with the law, I've always been, like, no, I don't want to break the law. I've always
Cool.
had that
Yeah.
fear.
No, I get it. And that's reasonable. And it's interesting as well that, I mean, you seem to have sidestepped all that toxic backlash against women and stuff like that, which is happening for a lot of guys at the moment, which I find really quite disturbing and worrying stuff. But that's not really entered your psyche, it seems, at any point. You haven't really started, you don't seem resentful about it. You seem more grateful about life and all that, even though,
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? My sisters, because a lot of I've only got a couple younger sisters, but my older sisters, they've been unbelievable for me, and
right.
they've just been again, they were really caring. They had their own challenges and stuff. So I think always from a young age, I've always wanted to be a great male for because I think women are great. I really do. I think that
Yeah.
the ability to withstand the things women have to go through on a month to
Yeah.
month basis. I think I've always looked at women like, hats off to you. And I'd want to be a man that a woman could be proud to say, okay, I
Cool.
know this man. So I've always had that, because I've never wanted to let the women in my life down. I've always wanted to take care of them. And albeit I've not always succeeded, but I've
Yeah.
always wanted to try.
Yeah.
And also as well, from a male's perspective as well, I've wanted to change the opinion of what males,
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
yeah, like, not all
Like, because
males.
I went to school in the 70s with second wave feminism, and it was like, all I could see was it was giving me more options.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I would look at my dad and go, like, your life is so narrow. I mean,
Mm.
it's
Yeah,
like, I don't want that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually want more choices and options in my life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, as you know, there isn't just males who's growing up on a council estate that are criminals. You know, if I look at my estate now, I actually know 3 or 4 people that have done really well in their careers.
Cool.
So it's like, your environment doesn't need to define you, and your gender shouldn't define you. There should be an opportunity for
Yeah,
everyone. So I'm very kind of like respectful and sort of neutral
correct.
with my view on that topic, to be honest with you. And I just think, like always, love is the only way. If you're kind
High
and you're
five on
loving,
that one, mate.
it's
Absolutely.
the
Mic drop.
only solution. So
Yeah,
I feel like if
yeah,
you put love out there,
yeah.
then it will make the world a better place. And maybe some
Yeah,
people aren't ready for it, but it's fine. Give them time, and I think
yeah.
they'll get there.
No, I'm totally with you. I think that's like from Buddha onwards, we've known that truth. Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It's
yeah.
like kindness and love are the fundamental realities of life.
I heard a song once, and it said, "An eye for an eye leaves everyone blind."
That's right.
And
It's,
it's like, hey, at one point,
it's like
someone's got to,
literally the truth, isn't it?
yeah.
To me,
And it's like, at one point, we've got to stop trying to make everyone
well, we're
blind.
just watching it at the moment explode. The Straits of Hormuz, whatever, whatever. I mean, yeah, all right, fine, whatever. That is that ever going to work?
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Never. So let's jump forward. You're doing the youth work. You're following the youth work curriculum. You're noticing that yeah, you're getting good relationships with young people, but they're still struggling because of the realities that they're living with. You began to talk about that. So when did that? I mean, it's not an obvious conclusion to then think, well, that means I'm going to go and start fostering people.
Yeah, it was, it
It's like
was,
that's not an obvious conclusion.
it was. So youth work really successful. We was on like ITV Surprise Surprise. My mum actually
Cool.
applied for me to be on there to surprise. They did a thing where they would go and surprise people doing great community work. And so it was real. It was really successful on a real small scale. And at the time, I was working full time, and you laugh, as an estate agent. So I was this really nice, caring person to society as a youth worker. But then I would be selling houses, and the perception of estate agents and salespeople isn't great. And I remember going on viewings, and they would always like, "Oh, you don't seem like an estate agent," and that would make me think, okay, well, I'm doing a good job then, because I'm changing the narrative, and that's always been my mindset. And I just happened to, um, at the time, I became sort of speaking to my dad a lot more, and I visited one of his friends' house, and he was a foster carer, but he fostered children on remand, so they were real challenging. And he had like
Oh
4 boys.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he had like 4 boys in his house, and they were really cool. And I saw a lot of similarities with them, and I thought, this is really cool. So I was speaking to him, and he's like, yeah, this is what I do. And I was like, what do you mean? If you do this as your job? He said, yeah. And my dad was his backup carer, so if he ever needed support, my dad would go in and support him. And I just happened with the estate agent period, managed to buy a house. And I always thought, I've got a couple of spare rooms. I definitely am not renting rooms out to adult professionals, because I don't. I have this thing about like mess, or like I don't know, just cleanliness and stuff like that. In terms
yeah,
of like, I just don't want any random people in my house, and so so it kind of like coincided. It was like, got the house, and then uh, meet my dad's friend who was a foster carer, and then I just looked into it, and then at the time, I applied to a local authority. I won't say who it was, and they actually said to me, "You're too young."
too
I think
young.
when I applied, I was like 23, 24. So yeah, I guess to society, I was young, but I was about 23 when I applied, and I was kind of I was I was kind of heartbroken from this local authority, because I've given so much to this local authority
Yeah,
as a
right.
young person and stuff. And then obviously I didn't let it define me, because I knew it was possible. And then eventually I met this a local authority, and the social worker. He really believed in me. He could really see what I wanted to do,
Yeah,
and we just went on that journey together. And then that's kind of how I became a foster carer. It was a challenge. It was like, I wanted to. Can I really help children in an environment? Am I really a good youth worker? And that's kind of what I wanted to create at home. I didn't want to be their parents. I didn't want to be their, I just wanted to be their friends, just someone that they could just
Yeah.
become their own in,
Nice.
be
Nice.
safe, fully protected.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I transitioned from youth work to fostering.
Okay. And so you got through this process, and people should know it's a very complicated process. It's not, it's like almost as complicated as adopting, but sort of
Yeah,
very
it was
bureaucratic, lots of police checks, background checks, and this and that and this and that.
took
Uh,
about 9 months, and it was intense. I tell you what, the intense part was is when they're asking about your family. They want to know your family history,
yeah,
and they want to know if you've had any deaths in the family and any significant traumas or any. And I'm quite a private person, so to share that, I was young. I was what, 23.
yeah.
I didn't want to share that part of my life because at the
Trevor, I'm
time,
going to let you in on a secret. You're still young.
no, okay, what that then I was super young, but I
You
was.
ain't old, mate. Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Thank you, appreciate it. But I feel like it was like, um, yeah, it was, yeah, it was fostering for me. It was, how can I put it? It was just a calling.
Was it?
Uh, yeah, it was just a. Once I saw the foster carer there, it was a calling, and they changed my life. But it was 9 months of like, I was anxious because I was like, I really want to do this.
Yeah,
And so when they were asking me questions about my history and my past, about any traumas, any deaths, any police, any, I was really scared because I was like, I don't want to fail. I don't want them to say
yeah,
no. And at the time, I thought it was yes or no. It was more a case of, okay, if we know this about you, what protective measures, what risk assessments can we put in place, and what
yeah,
training can we give you? At the time, I was thinking they're trying to find something bad about me to veer me off from being a foster care. That wasn't the case. They were doing their due diligence, and that's why it deserved to take so long.
yeah.
Uh, they got to know me, and yeah, it was the
And I guess, I mean, I suppose people assume, and I'm assuming as well, maybe I have a bit more knowledge than most people, but the children that are going to come to you may come with certain types of historical and emotional baggage.
yeah.
Uh, so they're not just kids who got lost on the train and we're just trying to find mum and dad, but there's been some issues going on in their life. Did
Yeah,
that phase you at all, or were you
you know
comfortable?
what? The first day I had to leave my full-time job once I became a foster carer.
Right.
I'm not necessarily that I agree with it now looking back, but I was quite naive in terms of they were saying, look, you need to leave, you need to be a foster carer. I didn't At the time I didn't know my rights. I was like, I don't want to let them down.
Yeah.
So because I could have still worked. But anyway, I didn't. So I didn't work for a good few years whilst I was a foster carer, because you get the allowance as a foster carer. So I was just, getting by as ends meet and stuff. And when I took my first child, he couldn't speak English. He was unaccompanied minor.
Yeah.
And his story. So he had to claim asylum. And if anyone knows about claiming asylum, it is a horrific experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I used to. That's what I did in social services. I worked with refugees.
yeah. And he
So
had to tell
loads of
his story
unaccompanied asylum-seeking kids.
to a
Yeah,
solicitor. And when you hear his story, he
yeah,
came through from Sudan over through Libya, and you hear the story, and people at the boat he came on was capsized, and people's heads were. It was a horrific experience that no 14, 15-year-old,
yeah,
any child should have to experience. And he was in tears every time speaking to the solicitor. He had a translator there and stuff, and it
yeah,
was really, really hard. So he was difficult because of the language barrier. I didn't know what he wanted to eat. I got to think I'm not Muslim, so when it was Ramadan, I
yeah,
fasted with him. I didn't know what he needed to eat. That was really hard. I remember walking through the front door when he first came, and he walked ahead. And I remember walking into the lounge. I remember just tears running down my face. I thought, God, this is it. This is his life is in my hands, and it was a real moment, and it was just like sink or swim. And it's like, right, okay, let's get the job done. And that
But
was the
I think that's a feeling that, I mean, you're not a parent as a fosterer, but there's similarities. And I think everybody that becomes responsible for a child knows that feeling of, I'm not ready.
yeah, yeah.
I
I,
don't know
I
what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's where human becomes its
Yeah,
own. It becomes because I think as soon as that child or that responsibility, and that's what I think about going back when I was a youth worker and
yeah,
working. I was responsible from a young age for helping people, and that's what shifted my focus. So
Sure.
I think when I was a foster carer, I was responsible for applying for a secondary school for him. I mean, I'm 24
Yeah,
applying
right.
for secondary schools for a 15-year-old, you know, and going to parents' evening and people looking at saying, "Oh, are you his key worker?" You know,
Right.
and it was those sort of little, at the time, you know, you just, no, I'm his foster carer and stuff. But looking back, I think, wow, like they were little hurdles I had to
Yeah.
convince people that I could actually care for this 15-year-old, you know, and that was hard, to be honest.
And then you
But then,
got another young person living
yeah,
with you.
I think two months later, I had another one of my boys, and his journey was real. They're all challenging. They all, and I'm going to play it down here. They were really challenging, but they were really special boys. Um, he, he had to get a lot of therapy,
Yeah.
and that was a what was interesting when he was, so he had to go get therapy, and then I had to go and get therapy. But at the time, I didn't know I was getting therapy. What I thought was happening is I thought I was going to meet someone and telling him what he's doing and how well he's doing.
Yeah.
It took me 2 years to realize, because I used to leave there with, like, imagine if you had a backpack on, I'd go there with a backpack on, I'd leave, the backpack will stay there. That's how I'd felt when
Great.
I left
Great.
that session. I never understood it, but I always felt great. And it wasn't until I understood what therapy was, I realized, oh, this is for me. This was for release.
Great.
My whole life was
Great.
about them. It was like, no, this is what he's doing, and this is what we've done. And honestly, that he was he he probably was the real, you know, if I look at becoming your own, he came in as this really quiet, you know, nervous young boy, and he
Yeah.
just left being himself. You know, when someone just,
Brilliant.
he knows what clothes he likes to wear, he knows what
Yeah.
sports he likes to play, he knows his career pathway. He just needed that environment where he could become his own, and that's that. You know, he was brilliant. And then I think about 4 or 5 months later, I got my final young boy, and he was autistic, so he was on the
Yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
And again, so you got unaccompanied minor. That's a whole. They were all so different.
Yeah.
And he used to. He wasn't very healthy, and there was a lot of smearing involved, etc. So it's like um, teaching him how to self care. You know, and you would think at the age he was, but that's what made me realize that, because I went into this thinking, give me Remand boys, I want to care for those. I want the ones in gangs. I want the, when you quickly realize that every child needs to be cared for.
Yeah.
That's what shifted my focus, and it made me think, wow, they're all so different.
Yeah.
But the love should be the same. The
Yeah. Yeah.
care should be the same,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what connected all of them. You know, they weren't best of friends. They didn't go out every day, but they respected each other, and because
Yeah.
they all knew they were there for different reasons, but they all knew they were safe, and yeah, it was the best time of my life was as a foster carer, hands
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. And you're quite an ambassador for foster care now, aren't you? You sort of really want to encourage people to get involved, even though there's a lot of hurdles. And also to encourage people to get involved at younger ages as well. So
Yeah, I think it's really cool, and that's my kind of thing at the moment. I think
yeah,
giving back is the new cool. I think all this, you know, hype on social media, sports players, music. I think the real cool is caring. I really do.
I'm with you on that
And
one.
I think we need to make more noise about carers. Whether you're, as I said, whether you're a therapist, a nurse, whatever it is, we are cool. We are actively helping save lives and reshape society. So I think there's a real cool in that. And I feel like that, for me, I started young, and maybe people could say I was privileged. I didn't come from you know, I didn't have financial stability. I just made it work, and
Yeah.
it was unbelievable. You are paid as a foster carer, so you do get support.
Yeah.
Albeit, you know, when I worked out, it was probably worked out to be about £3 an hour, because it's
Yeah.
24 hours a day, so it's not loads of money,
Yeah.
but it was a sacrifice of my life, and it's
Yeah.
shaped who I am, and it almost feels like I feel different to who I was then. You know, I would feel like it shaped me in that time to be a different person today. So I'm a massive advocate. I think we should all look into it and consider caring. whether you're a foster carer.
And also, I think there's another message, which is a gender message as well, which is
Yeah,
about encouraging guys to think about this in particular. That
yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't
Because
think a lot of men would necessarily think, but there's a real need for men to move into this type of experience, I think.
yeah, I think as well, because I think society's shifted now.
Yeah,
Opportunity is there for all genders now. To
yeah,
be who we want to be, and the opportunity to be a foster carer should present itself and normalize in terms of for the males as well, and young males as well. And I understand the opinions or the stigma around, but it has to change. It has to
it
change
does.
because we
It
are
does.
just as capable of caring
Yeah.
as anyone else.
And also, I mean, I'd say from a psychological perspective, becoming a carer is the best choice you're ever going to make for your health and well-being. I mean,
Yeah,
it
I
just
agree.
is.
Yeah,
Nurturing is like the core of health and well-being, without a doubt.
and I agree with that. I believe that's what we're here for. I
Yeah,
believe we are here to serve one another,
with
um,
yeah,
and I believe, unfortunately, again, living in London, it's not cheap. So I understand the pressures, and I
yeah,
understand, but society, we have to change that. Like, and what's really interesting in certain careers, like you could be a personal trainer, right? And you're celebrated for helping save lives, right? You
yeah.
could be a surgeon and you're celebrated for saving. But as soon as you're a support worker or a nurse, the celebration's not the same. So
No, no,
we're
I
not
know.
respected as much. But we're doing it's early intervention.
Yeah,
We're saving lives, no different to a surgeon, no different to a personal trainer. So it should be considered a career pathway. It should be cool. And there should be opportunities to make a good living
yeah.
as well as, because the like you said, the caring element, it will always overweigh the
I
amount of
think
money.
society has to ask itself some serious questions, whether it wants to pay for it in the way you're describing, or it wants to pay for it by putting people in prison or a psych ward. Those are the options, because we're going to pay one way or the other.
Yeah,
Either we
absolutely.
do the early intervention and we create these reasonable career paths that are remunerated, or we just continue to build prisons. I mean, what that's where we are, and
Yeah.
that's the truth here. At what point did you think, right, okay, this fostering's good, but now I want to think about a much more sort of rounded service, because you now have some children's homes, I think you've
Yeah,
said.
yeah. So it was again, when I got into fostering, I realized you learn about my first boy. He came from a residential children's home. So when I visited, I was like, oh, this is cool, because it felt like a youth club. It was a house. So then I started to be inquisitive. I started to look into it and stuff. And it was a combination of a few factors. I wanted a career. I wanted to help more children, and I wanted to see if we could use the fostering environment in a residential space. So it was like a challenge. It was like, okay, could we create a home away from home, but in
Yeah,
a residential space? Could I train staff to learn my model and learn my values? So it was a combination of a few things. And ultimately, in a residential space, you employ people, so you give people an opportunity to work and have a
yeah,
career pathway. You have more young people, so you can support more young people. Whereas fostering, my boys stayed with me till they were 21. So they they
right.
they stayed way beyond they were expected to, but I was
Yeah,
never going to let them go until they were ready to go. Whereas in the residential space, I know I can keep children and then, for a long period of time. And so yeah, it was a combination of you. I wanted a career, I wanted to help. I loved the concept of employing people that care, training. It's not been easy. It's been really, really challenging, if I'm
yeah.
honest. We're heavily regulated by Ofsted, which is rightfully so. But I've seen both sides. I've seen the fostering success, I've seen the residential success, and I truly believe the true success lies somewhere in between.
Yeah,
In between, do we need mass amounts of residential homes? No, but I do believe we need specialist homes, because
yeah,
some
yeah.
children,
There's no argument here. Absolutely, without a doubt. Some like some sort of. I think we need a rainbow of services,
yeah,
because we're going to have a rainbow of kids with needs
that's
and adults
if
with
we're putting
needs.
it, yeah,
With
yeah,
some people do need very strict institutional care, and some people need various gradings of that in between all the way to independent living,
Yeah.
and it's those options and choices that we need. So
Yeah,
we
and that's the key word, is it? Choices. We want to make sure
yeah,
these children have choices, because we have to intervene early and early. We can't afford to get it wrong. Because I always say to my staff, this is our job. This is their life.
yeah,
We can't afford to get our job wrong, because it impacts their life, and they will
yeah,
never
yeah.
forget it. So it's like,
And I would say, I don't know what you think about this, because I think there's like the it's not just the children's lives, but it's everybody's lives,
mm,
because those children are part of society, and if we get that wrong, we're putting something wrong into society, and
as
that affects all of us, right?
you're preaching to the choir, because I say that today's children are tomorrow's adults. So if I
Yeah,
want to get an Uber ride in 5 years' time, it could be that child in care. It could be that your
yeah.
child in a youth club. If I have to have surgery, if I want to go to,
There you go.
emergency,
There you,
whatever it is,
there you
whatever
go.
it is. Uh, if I want my children to go to a youth club, if I want my child, I don't know, to go to the GP and the receptionist there, like, so these children are the future of tomorrow, aren't they? They're tomorrow's
Without
adults. So it's
without
like, they
yeah,
have to be our focus. And I think
yeah,
if we lived in the state of mind to say, what would a child think? This decision I make today, if I'm driving road rage and there was an imaginary child beside me, and when I was at that point of road rage, I looked to the left and was like, well, what would this child think if I start to be angry? You would think, no, this child shouldn't see this. So
yeah,
it's that kind of mindset, isn't it? It's kind of the unconscious mindset of thinking, okay, well, if a child was watching, because they are watching children and they mirror behaviors,
yeah,
especially
yeah.
at certain ages, they copy. So I feel like you're right. If we don't take care of our children, then there won't be a future that we where we want to be taken care
Yeah.
of, because they'll be saying, well, how do you expect me to care for you when you didn't even teach me how to?
That's right. But the Jesuits used to say, "Give me the child, I'll give you the adult."
Yeah,
And it's like it's the truth, and we have these children, and we are making decisions now about the way society is going to be tomorrow,
yeah,
and we need to step up and be responsible for those decisions. Sort of at the end of the show, I told you it'd go quick. I mean, it always does. So
yeah.
that's an hour. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there like, do you do public speaking or anything like that? Is there a website where people get hold of you? And
I'm on social media, so
yeah,
you can find me on like Instagram. I've just
yeah,
gone on TikTok. I'll be honest with you, I've spent my whole life. This sector tells you to be quiet and in the corner, work in the silence.
yeah,
But I've said this year, you know what? No, I've done a lot of great things and I'm proud of it. And there's probably so many more people doing great things. And actually, let me start talking on social media. Let
good.
me start talking on TikTok. So I'm early stages of my social media. I'm obviously on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
At the moment, I don't have a website, but I am fully available on sort of on social media and stuff. But
So people
I've
can
said,
find you under your name on sort of
yeah, I
media.
think I think yeah, just Trevor Elliott MBE, and
Okay,
then
great.
you'll find me on LinkedIn, and I'm just trying to step out my comfort zone,
Good,
because
good.
there is if I wouldn't be here today if I didn't make the decision in January
You
to say,
know, part of the, like you're saying, part of the issue is like in the therapy training, are there people with my face and the way I look in that training? And partly it's because you have to come forward.
yeah.
You have to put your face out there, man.
In
You
my
really do.
community, I'll be honest, in my culture, in my community, this isn't cool.
I
This
know.
isn't cool. And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
it
I
would
know.
be better off I drove a really nice car, had a really nice
That's
watch,
right.
and I was a sports player. And
Yeah.
then everyone would want to see it. But I actually, every time I post something meaningful, I get so much love and
Yeah,
support. And
without doubt.
this is cool. But again, it's the I don't know, the trained way of thinking. It's like, no, 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 that's not cool. But it is,
It really is.
therapy, so I that's why I really want to change the narrative. I want more people to consider this pathway, because like you said, caring is the biggest gift. When you can be cared for and when you can be caring is the biggest gift in society.
Absolutely. Thanks. Going to leave it on that note. Thanks, Trevor, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that and found it insightful, folks. I certainly did. And look out for this guy. He's going to be everywhere soon, without a doubt. Really good to have you all here. Going to say goodbye for now, and do send us comments and to let me know what you think about the show. Anything else you want to do? Maybe you want to get Trevor back at some point when he's got his website up and running, and then we can get him in and doing some public speaking and stuff like that. So great to have you all here. So goodbye for now, folks.